to say, all right, now, okay, that electric current going out, these regional areas, you can map them out partially already. At least I have done a small amount of mapping to see where they might lay these areas. And then you can see which crop grow zones are underneath those areas. And then you go, okay, this is going to be pretty much 100% loss. That's going to go down over there. That's a major producer of that crop, like oats, for example, in Russia, in the Volga region. Take it off. I'm not going to say 100% offline, but it's getting toward that northerly latitude anyway. And you got the electrical input there. So that's pretty much a write-off. So you can start doing that and add or subtract different areas across the planet that may be increasing yield because of these changes that we're experiencing. There might be more rain flow there. But a lot of places that we've set, you know, for the plant and harvest dates, they're going out of kilter right now. We're not going to get them back. So we need to adjust to the new.
You were probably on my show at least 5 years ago, maybe longer. Now, I remember from the very beginning, you know, you've really talked about the coming weather changes. You know, I've watched, I can't tell you, countless amount of your videos that seem to be just, you know, really fulfilling, I wouldn't say the prophecy, you don't say you're a prophet, but what you said, the predictions that you said, yeah, the predictions that you said, how, you know, we see those coming to pass. The title of the video is, Are We Really Going Into a Mini Ice Age? Based upon your latest
Yes.
information. Yeah, and what is that effectively for the folks that will be tuning into this broadcast? What does that effectively mean to them, or especially I'm here in Montana? Okay, so we're above the 45th parallel, I believe, and I know right above. I think that's at the bottom of Montana. Is it the 45th parallel? Whatever it is. Usually people migrate below. I think it's the 45th parallel during the, if I remember correctly, during the grand solar minimum. The whole entire state of Montana is above the 45th parallel. Now that doesn't mean that we're not going to be able to live here. What kind of challenges are they going to face, David?
Changes in latitude, changes in attitude. Nothing remains the same, my friend.
Hey, Jimmy Buffett.
I don't have the sailboat. In my voice, I didn't want to sing, you know. Copyright strike, you know how it is with YouTube these days.
Yeah. What's it going to be like here?
Well, in all seriousness, no, 45 degree for, at least in the United States, because if you go to Europe, it's a little bit higher. It's at 50. And then if you go back over into China, whatever, it's back to around 45 degrees north latitude. Everything above that's going to almost be zero yield. So that's the zero break-even point. You're going to have to come further south than that. So if you're going to switch crops, you could, but you got to look at the nutritive content, especially with the dairy industry. So corn has its thing, and each type of crop and byproduct have its already calorific value, protein value mapped out. So if you're going to put it into the dairy industry or whatever, you know how much milk will come from this much input. Well, if we're going to start switching crops, you're really going to have a nutritionist take a look at it for all. That would be for pigs, chickens, dairy, cattle, whatever. You know, can they switch the crop, and can they grow enough of it to have the same type of yields that keep our present society moving forward? And if you say no, that we ran out of time to switch crops and learn where they grow best, then you're seeing exactly what I'm talking about. We're not going to be able to respond fast enough. And then it'll be whatever we grow in the current regions, which they already know we're going to go less and less into 45 degree north and above. And that would include Australia too. Think about 45 degrees south in the southern hemisphere. You're talking about parts of New Zealand, Australia, South Africa, South America, and then some of those random events going up into far southern Brazil. So if you're kind of resonating that, you say, well, they can't switch fast enough, then these grand solar minimums are going to take out some of the yield. So I'll come back in sort of a scientific way to describe it here in a minute or two. So if the sun has been charging our Earth for 400 years, so they should come to equilibrium. And then there's another layer, that's our crust, it's different charge. So atmosphere is different charge than the crust, and then the molten. I wouldn't go to the core. I would just go down into the mantle. That's a different charge as well. So you get these different charge layers that have all pretty much equalized with the sun in the last 200. Let's say I'll be generous and say 200 years, not 400. And the sun's stepping down on a 400-year cycle now. So what's happening is our Earth needs to now equalize the overcharge with what's happening. The sun's stepping down, so our Earth needs to release more energy. Now, currently, it's coming out in global electric circuit outbound, where you're seeing a lot of ground to sky lightning. So think about if you charge something and make it vibrate faster, like one of the light bulbs that you see in these coffee shops. When you turn up the dial, the higher you turn it, the faster it's glowing and it gets brighter. That just means faster electrons moving through there. Slower electron movement is dimmer light. So the faster the energy is moving through that medium, it's going to glow brighter depending on if there's more electricity going into it, or it's going to dim if there's less electricity. But that would be the same with moving cloud cells and regional weather patterns. So if you have a magnetic field line coming off the Earth that's becoming more highly charged, and it's continuously seems to be one of the main outflows of current, well, you would start to see regional weather patterns around some areas follow that. And if you go, and again, this is just basic science stuff that anybody can learn about with magnetic field lines on the planet, the sun, how it connects to us with those same magnetic field lines, and how everything has a north-south orientation, and how the Earth's magnetic field's shifting. So you start to say, all right, now, okay, that electric current going out, these regional areas, you can map them out partially already. At least I have done a small amount of mapping to see where they might lay, these areas. And then you can see which crop grow zones are underneath those areas. And then you go, okay, this is going to be pretty much 100% loss. That's going to go down over there. That's a major producer of that crop, like oats, for example, in Russia, in the Volga region. Take it off. I'm not going to say 100% offline, but it's getting toward that northerly latitude anyway. And you got the electrical input there, so that's pretty much a write-off. So you can start doing that, add or subtract different areas across the planet that may be increasing yield because of these changes that we're experiencing. There might be more rain flow there. But a lot of places that we've set, for the plant and harvest dates, they're going out of kilter right now. We're not going to get them back. So we need to adjust to the new, but nobody's really talking about that solution, James. So I just don't know. I'm in a conundrum myself here. I wish the conversation were happening.
Well, I think that one of the things I think we're going to see, David, we already see some of the supply chain problems that we're having here now. We've heard the story over and over again about all these ships that are sitting offshore. As they continue to clamp down and go after the people that are involved in mass transportation. I mean, truck drivers. They've already talked about going after truck drivers. The railroad workers are not going to go along with this. There's going to be a supply chain shortage, and I think you're going to see, like, the malls are not going to have any items in the malls for there to be anything on the shelves that is from overseas or outside this country. I see one day perhaps all this Chinese crap that we have all in every pretty much retail store, that stuff's going to be going away, and malls are going to be turned into grow centers where they're going to have your different. Before it was a Finish Line sports store. Now it's where the corn grows. Before it was a Hallmark store. Now that's where the beets grow. Something like that where they can, because they're going to have to in climates like mine here. You're right. There's going to be a 0% crop yield. It doesn't mean people are just going to sit around and wait to die. No, they're going to, innovate. They're going to start growing indoors. They're going to, if there's no goods inside a mall, why have a mall sit empty when you can put crops in there? You can grow food in there. Do you see these malls and these other maybe some of these big venues, these sports venues? I mean, if things go really south, they won't be playing sports and things like that. People won't want to see that because they're going to be hungry. Do you see these places maybe being turned into food growing centers, David, or somebody coming up with some sort of a food growing center or a mobile growing center, something like that? Do you see innovation in our future?
I do. And football stadiums, not the horse racing track, Seabiscuit, of course, during the Great Depression, when they also had this exact set of events unfold, there were still people that spent money. So there are going to be venues that will maintain their usefulness, and then others. And it depends how far you want to go with the indoor vertical ag, because you're going to want to look at target species that are, beets are awesome if you want to get sugar, but I will be going for Moringa oleifera and Gainura, and these kind of superfoods that can also be vegetables. There's a lot of variants that you could use, but I would be going for incredible superfood, high value, target plant part inside. And, a friend of mine, Ted Marchildren, he has the Omega Rotary Grow Garden system. And it's a barrel that rotates around with LED lights in the center, and quite efficient. You can lay that thing out as a strip that you roll inside the barrel. And I'm telling you, the amount of food you can grow in that little tiny space is unbelievable. And especially with the leafy greens and, like I say, high target, high value superfood plants, it's just never ending. It rotates. And in Gynura, for example, it can be done. But then it really comes down to, how about grains? And then how much of that's going to be given to cattle or poultry, swine production. Fish is quite efficient. You can use that whole thing in the hydroponic system. But think about it. So you had a whole mall, and then you had the parking garage also. How much corn or wheat could you really grow in there? And then if it's a limited amount, would you be giving it to animals, which need a huge amount of input to produce the meat, to then go eat the meat? Or would you stay pretty much on a veg diet with really smaller animals that are easy to raise with some of the scraps you give it, and also a little bit of input of some of the good grains? You know, all these things are going to circulate. I mean, chickens, they don't take much. Guinea pigs, there's all kind of blue hens. Blue hens are cool, little small hens. You can eat the eggs, they're little tiny ones. You need a toothpick to get them out.
Do you find it coincidental, David, that we're coming on the cusp of food issues, as you spoke about so eloquently? Do you think that's why we're seeing all this vegetable meat and 3D printed meat? And are people that have had, is it just for them? It's just financial, right? They don't really care if people eat meat. They don't care if people die and turn into meat. They just want to make money off it. Is that what do you think about that?
Well, in one point, yes, but if it's not available, then it's not available, and you're going to have anger over the non-availability. So if you can get people away from, I think it's been like a 30-year plan so far, knowing what I know, and then seeing how that would taper out into, I found some really good charts from like 1498 in Europe in 3 different countries, the amount of grain that they were growing, and also the types of animals that were being raised in a second subset. And again, same thing. They went away from cattle. And it was chicken and pig and goat and sheep. So those categories of animals, the smaller ones, took over. And then after the food started to grow again, more reliably, cattle came back on the scene. So you can almost see that repeat in history. Now, has it been, oh, we're going to demonize it because they put out methane, and oh, they eat too much grass, and oh, you need to put too much into them. Oh, there's too many antibiotics. Oh, there's too much this, there's too much. Like, how many times have you heard a cow demonized in your lifetime? It's almost like they've planned for 30 years to get you away from meat, but there's still a lot of stubborn people out there that want that filet mignon.
Not in India. Not in India, you won't hear them.
Not in India.
India, they love those
maybe
cows.
So this is the trend. Maybe India went into that, and then it became like part of the culture, and they never came out and they've continued with the smaller animals, goat, sheep, no cow. Cows are sacred. Perhaps that was the way to keep the cattle production at a minimum in the country. But, I'm thinking on like a 4,000-year cycle, something like this, built into the religion afterward, versus a chart from 1498, 1496 across Europe, where they changed animal husbandry techniques based on the amount of food input. Nothing would surprise me anymore these days, but how would you spend your grain once you grow it in a limited thing like a parking garage or a mall?
It's going to get to a point where I don't know if it's going to get this bad, but the potential in that is, David, it gets so bad that no one wants to barter food because they don't want to they don't want to leave no matter what you're going to offer them. I mean, unless it's, I don't know, like a steer or something that, allows them to be able to remake or something that allows them to be able to replace that. Otherwise, I mean, and I don't think it's going to get that bad in all places. I think a place like, for example, Montana here, we're in the Flathead Valley. It's a really big prepping community, if you will, and there's a lot of, former military here, and a lot of, farmers and ranchers and hunters, and but a place like Seattle, 12,000 people living in tents, on the sidewalk. There's going to be in certain pockets, David, there's going to be some tremendous challenges. And I don't think, unless we don't come together, and unless we come together, it's not. It's we have. That's one of the things that we have to do. They constantly try to divide us, divide and conquer, divide and conquer, divide and conquer. The way to break that plan is for us to come together, and I believe hunger is one way to bring people together. Unfortunately, it's the rough way, but we're going to have to learn to put our differences aside when it comes down to we don't know what our next meal is going to be from, David. Aren't there going to be much more complex and difficult questions to face? It's going to could get dicey, to say the least. What say you?
In the beginning, the way that seems society is programmed about I'll do anything for my kids, I'll come and steal your thing, I'll bang down your door, knock your door down, and steal all your preps to feed my family. Like that first wave of those behaviors, whether it be families, individuals, organized groups of people, that's going to end pretty quick. They're all going to be taken out. And then what's going to be left are the people who understand we need to work together to get this done, because stealing from Peter to rob Paul and keep their kids fed, what happens when that food runs out? Unless you're replenishing it in a community fashion, it's just going to run out. And that's the whole thing about the preps run out. There's no relying on your preps for 20 years to keep it's getting you through a season until you can get to a growing season and hopefully have enough safety and security to be able to bring a crop up. Now, if it comes to that point where you really can't even grow a garden because your garden's getting raided and people are coming in the middle of the night to steal your tomatoes or your beans or something, at that point, society is truly broken down. That's a place I don't want to be.
No.
So being and working in a community where there is security around that you can protect, and I really hope it doesn't go that far. I really do not want to see that. But the way it's all positioned right now, it seems like we're being pushed into a purposeful humidor to achieve a political end of whatever that is. Put something in the body and hit it with a frequency, put something in the body and become complacent or vibrate differently. I'm not sure, but there's an end to the means here. And being the global population it is now, if they really cared about the global population, these same media outlets, players of large business, central banks, the gamut would have been front and center, page one, every day, talking about the solutions for the last 20 years. Because, John Casey, when did he start talking about this? 1997, into the 2000s, early. And nobody took action. And still to this date, there's so many signs saying, oh my gosh, we really are we're so far behind the 8 ball, you can't even see it with a telescope. That's how far behind we are the 8 ball. And we sit to this day and they think with no fertilizer next year, the yields are going to come in, and then the losses on the natural side. Like, there's some serious issues to deal with, but it's going to come down to you. Like, you can't rely on anybody to do it for you. That's the whole thing. Like, you can't rely on that. So this whole misnomer of trust the plan, somebody's going to come in and help you and do something. I'm not talking so much about the Q thing. I'm just talking about the way that we have been raised, that somebody will come to rescue you. It's a rescue culture. Be the hero. All this kind of thing. It's almost a pre-program. Let somebody else ride in the sunset. So let somebody else come in and save you. Like, how many people are going to wait?
David, it's in every Hollywood movie. That's the ending of every Hollywood movie, is the hero rides in when everything and all hope is lost and it looks like there's no way out but certain death. The hero somehow always rides in and solves the problem and takes care of everything and vanquishes the bad guy, and he gets the girl and they ride off together in the sunset. That is a fantasy. That's a Hollywood fantasy. And it's been done so many times over and over again that people seem to think, and we live in a reality TV world, David. Look, our last president was a reality TV superstar. We live in a reality TV world. And like I've said before, they took us from watching reality TV back in the early 2000s with Survivor and Fear Factor, and now we are participants in the reality TV show. We've went from spectators to actual participants in the day-to-day reality TV of the globalist. And there is going to be a great reset that's going to happen. There's no denying it. But the key is going to be, whose great reset is it going to be? Is it going to be the globalist great reset, where it's 1,000 years of the worst unimaginable tyranny that we've ever lived under and our posterity's lived under? Or is it going to be a liberty and freedom and abundance rather than scarcity, and honest accounting and honest money and honest, everything? That's where we're at right now, David. Any comments on those? On my babbles here? Am I babbling?
Well, that'll be the sell into the digital central bank issued currencies, is what you just referenced there. It'll be honest money. It's backed by gold. It's honest money. It's backed by forests that are, the earth itself. You can't be any more honest than that as a currency asset value base. Don't let anybody else do it. You can't do it yourself. And, that's how this whole thing has been programmed, is you can't do it yourself. You need to rely on others. You need to rely on the companies, the government to take care of you. You can't do it yourself. You can't make wise choices, blah, 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 blah. That's the way it's been sold to us for how many generations. And now, how are they going to get people to move over to what you consider sound money, sound government, sound law enforcement, sound judges, sound judicial system again? Like, we have to reset everything. So how are they going to play it into having value? Well, how can we even trust the people who put us in this situation to solve the problem and bring us back into a new system? Like, they're doing it on purpose. Nothing's organic anymore. Everything's an excuse, a narrative, and a distraction for an end. You need to get more self-sufficient right now. That's all I got to say. And if you can perfect those skill sets, then others around you and other communities will get those. Imagine having 5 communities that are really tight and then be able to trade with each other in that kind of regional sense. But the way it's going is, you can't do anything. You can't do it yourself. You got to rely on us. No, you can't do it. Wait for somebody. Wait for somebody. If you wait for somebody to bring you food, you're dead.